We're just sick of it.
The South Carolina congressman leading the new Benghazi Select Committee.
The Speaker can decide whether he thinks an old washed-up prosecutor from South Carolina is good or not. I will volunteer to be a summer intern.
Chairman Goudy in just seconds. And former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice is out.
It's possible to live in an echo chamber that serves only to reinforce your high opinion of yourself and what you think.
Is free speech a fiction at Rutgers University? Karl Rove strikes back at the university, silencing Secretary Rice.
Shame on the Rutgers faculty. Shame on them.
Plus, my personal offer to Rutgers. Then an American Marine right now sitting in a Mexican prison.
2 tours in Afghanistan, this is by far the hardest, mainly because it's the fear of the unknown.
Get ready for a jam-packed On the Record tonight. And up first, the just hours ago named chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Benghazi, Representative Trey Gowdy, joins us. Good evening, soon to be Mr. Chairman. Nice to see you. So,
yes,
you know that. I'm very well. You know that the Democrats are going to say this is partisan, this is a witch hunt. How are you going to convince the American people that this is going to be a fair hearing, a fair investigation?
Well, Greta, your viewers would still have the same unanswered questions that we have. Why our security profile was so low in Benghazi on the anniversary of 9/11, why we didn't have any assets moving during the siege itself, and why government can't be trusted to answer your questions accurately and completely in the aftermath. So the jury that I'm interested in are reasonable-minded, fair-minded people like your viewers. Washington is its own ecosystem. They wouldn't like it if I cured malaria tonight. I mean, because I'm a Republican. So, of course, they're going to be critical. That's not the jury, although I would tell Adam and some of my other colleagues to at least let us have a hearing before you judge it. I mean, at least let the committee be constituted and the rules be adopted before you declare it to be a political exercise. That's not too much to ask, is it?
You refer to Adam, I take it that you mean Congressman Adam Schiff, and he has said that he urges Democrats to boycott and not participate on the committee. You say what to him?
Well, I would say this. You know, Greta, I like Adam. I think Adam is really smart. He was hired by the Bush administration to work at the U.S. Attorney's Office in California. I was hired by the Clinton administration to work in the U.S. Attorney's Office in South Carolina. That's what I love about the justice system. She wears a blindfold for a reason. She doesn't and finding the truth, then your political ideation shouldn't matter at all. So what I would say to Adam is, look, Republicans hired you and gave you your job in California. The Democrats gave me a job back in the 1990s. At least let the process have a chance to work before you declare it null and void.
Now, there have been a number of hearings. So what would make this different, a select committee? Because there have been, I don't know, 10, 12, 13 hearings already by different committees. Why is this different?
Well, it's been so fragmented, Greta, as you know. I mean, I can't even attend the Intel committee hearings, so I have no idea what they've uncovered. Just like they don't come to the OGR, the Oversight Committee. We need a list of the witnesses that have been talked to and which ones are left to be talked to. We need a list of the documents. And by the way, I'm not interested in redacted documents or an overclassification. I want the documents. So I want all of the evidence, and then people can draw different conclusions from those facts and evidence, but you can't draw conclusions if you don't have all the facts. And what this committee is going to do is once and for all lay out all the facts, and then your jury can draw whatever inferences and conclusions they want to.
All right, you mentioned the classified documents. I mean, I've had a beef with Washington for however long I've been here. It seems like anytime anyone wants to hide anything in any administration, Republican, Democrat, the trick is to classify it. Are you willing to go through the documents, and do you have the power and the authority to declassify any documents you think were overclassified that shouldn't be kept secret from the American people?
Speaker Boehner is going to give us whatever power we need to get to the bottom of it. You know, Jason Chaffetz was on another show today showing the discrepancy between two documents that were produced. It's ostensibly the same document, but this had redactions that one did not have in it. And that's inexcusable when you live in a free and open society where you're supposed to have access to the truth and the facts. So the Speaker is going to give us the tools that we need to be able to answer everyone's questions when the Select Committee has completed its work.
All right, you told me right here that you have evidence that not only are they, the Obama administration, hiding it, but there is intent to hide it. I can't disclose that evidence yet, but I have evidence that there was a systemic, intentional decision to withhold certain documents from Congress. Will we see those documents?
Yeah, well, You know, I can't prove to you what I don't know. I don't know whether the documents have been destroyed. I know this, that there are witnesses that have the courage to come forward and share with us that there was a systematic effort to keep certain documents. Take the ARB, for instance. Does anyone really believe the ARB had access to all of the documents and all of the witnesses? I don't know anyone who believes that. So necessarily, that undercuts whatever findings they may have found. I'm telling you this, if a document exists, regardless of classification, we need to have access to it. That does not necessarily mean that it will be public. But as you noted, there is an overclassification to protect people's reputations and careers, and that is not a legitimate reason to classify a document just because you're worried that it may hurt feelings or impact your career.
You mentioned the ARB. That was the State Department board that looked at Benghazi. And according to the information I have, is they looked at an after-action report by the military. Actually, they didn't look at it. A summary was read to them. They didn't read the whole thing. They didn't read it themselves. Are you going to be able to get to that after-action report by the military so we can find out what the military was saying within, hours and days of September 11th, 2012?
Yes, ma'am. I'm not going to rely on any summaries. Greta, you are a very good lawyer. There's a reason you can't just summarize evidence in front of the jury. The jury has a right to hear the question. They can judge the credibility of the witness. The credibility can be impeached. I'm not interested in summaries. I'm not interested in synopses. I'm interested in access to the document and the witness, and I'll decide whether or not I think the appropriate questions were asked in the past. With respect to the ARB, the Secretary of State was never interviewed by the ARB, so how in the world could I tell your viewers whether or not she was aware that our facility had been attacked before in Benghazi or that the British ambassador had been attacked? How can I answer that question if the ARB never saw fit to even interview the Secretary of State?
There's another document that was tweeted today, or a series of documents, an idea, the PDBs, the Presidential Daily Briefings for September 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, I don't know what days, but there is some precedent for the Bush administration releasing it. Those are the briefings from the CIA to the President. That would tell us what the intelligence community from the CIA thought happened on the 10th, or on the 11th, 12th, and 13th. Will you seek to see those, and will you urge a disclosure of those to the people?
I want to see every single solitary relevant material document. In fact, I want to see everything for which there can be any argument that it is relevant, and then we can judge whether or not it's material. For all I know, the Intel Committee has already seen the document you referenced, which is another reason the Speaker did what he did, because we've been fragmented, and what Intel knows, oversight and foreign affairs and Homeland Security would not know.
Do you have an end point? Because one of the things that people always worry about in investigations is that they take on a life of their own, and we'll be doing this for the next 100 years. Do you have at least some sort of mission that this will be finished by a particular date? Because and I guess that no matter what, everyone's a little concerned will be before midterms, after midterms, because that'll have a political implication. People will say, do you have sort of in your mind when you want to have this finished?
I think the resolution that the House is going to take up is going to have a date in it. That date has not been shared with me, Greta, but you also know that if there is a systematic intent to withhold, the State Department said just this week that they are in the process of complying with subpoenas. Well, it's been 20 months. I mean, how long does it take to comply with a document request? There's no judge in America that would allow you 20 months to comply with a subpoena. So part of the answer to your question depends upon how forthcoming and how willing this administration is to provide access to the witnesses and the documents. But with respect to politics, Greta, I would just say this. There are certain things in our culture that have to transcend politics. And I don't mean to sound naive, but the murder of 4 fellow Americans and an attack on a facility that is emblematic of our country should transcend politics. And I know that our fellow citizens can handle the truth, but only if they get access to it. They can draw their own conclusions about politics, who is at fault, who is not at fault. But they can't do it if they don't have access to all the documents and all the witnesses.
Congressman, thank you, sir. And, of course, there are a few technical glitches with the studio. I don't know if you know, but we do hope you'll come back again anyway. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And Republicans and Democrats already battling over the Benghazi Select Committee. Republican Representative Peter King slamming Democratic Representative Adam Schiff's call for a committee boycott. And joining us, House Majority Leader Eric Cantor. Good evening, sir.
Hey, Greta. Good evening.
What do you think about Congressman Schiff saying that there should be a boycott and Democrats shouldn't participate in this select committee?
Well, you know, I would hope that Democrats, just like Republicans, want to get to the bottom of the situation here and get the facts out there. The public has a right to know what else the White House is covering up, what else are they hiding. And I also think that the Democrats, just like Republicans, should want to make sure that a president does not and cannot just ignore the congressional oversight process. And clearly we have an instance here where there was a court order that resulted in the revelation of an email that the White House had been withholding from congressional subpoenas. So again, I'm hopeful, and I think that they ultimately would do the right thing and participate in this process.
What difference, though, there have been 14 committee hearings. Why does the select committee make this any different? How is the select committee more able to get that particular, for instance, that email that was the subject of a court order? What makes the select committee any more efficient or able to get that? Obviously, didn't get it here. Than a series of committees?
Well, first of all, you know, I am proud of the work that has been done thus far. There's been a lot of serious work to try and get to the bottom of this situation. Obviously, the long-standing impact here is about being honest with the public and stopping any kind of deceit or cover-up on the part of the White House. This select committee will be able to focus its energies in ensuring that the White House is going to be held accountable and that it cannot just ignore congressional oversight. You know, this is a part of our government, part of the checks and balances that we're about. And I know that we are going to embark with Chairman Goudy's leadership on a very serious effort to make sure that this is exposed and long-standing to make sure that our policy in the Middle East and in North Africa actually can be one that will stop any future terrorist attack from occurring.
The committee is not a done deal. There still has to be a vote. Is that correct, from the House to form this committee?
Right. There will be a vote this week to form this committee going forward. And I know that Chairman Goudy, a terrific and serious legislator, is going to do a great job in leading this effort.
Do you expect the Democrats will really refuse a position on that committee? I mean, is that just some saber rattling?
Well, you know, I can't see how the American people are going to put up with a refusal to participate in a serious process that wants to get to the bottom of what has clearly been deceitful action, that the White House has not been forthcoming in response to congressional subpoenas, and just as it has been doing in the area of legislation and policymaking, decided just to ignore Congress. And the fact is now it's all caught up with them, and we're going to be now engaged in a process of a select committee that will be focusing on trying to find out what else is the White House hiding, what else have the American people been denied in terms of their right to know.
I'm a big believer in it takes as long as you have. So I like to sort of give things sort of a time limit. Have you given this investigation a time limit so this doesn't become part of all of our lives forever?
I am a big believer in that as too, Greta, and I think that the resolution that will be creating this select committee will state very clearly what the mission is and a time for us to wrap things up with some takeaways. I mean, we're not just about forming this and going about this investigation just to do it. We want the takeaways for the American people. We want them to realize their right to know. And again, I would say long term, we want to make sure that the policies that the White House has been about in terms of the anti-terrorist policies can be corrected so that this type of event where an ambassador is killed and other people serving our country are killed in an embassy setting does not happen again.
Majority Leader, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greta.
So where was President Obama during the deadly terror attack? Here's what former National Security Council spokesperson Tommy Vietor told Bret Baier.
I was in the Situation Room that night, okay, and we didn't know where the ambassador was definitively. In fact,
was the president in the Situation Room?
No, and the fact that your network at one time reported that he watched video feed of the attack as it was ongoing is part of what I think has been
let me get to the bottom
of
it then.
inaccurate
Where was the president?
in the White House.
So, where was the president? Senators John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and Kelly Ayotte writing directly to President Obama demanding an answer to that question. And Senator McCain joins us. Nice to see you, sir.
Thank you, Greta.
Why do you want to know this?
This young man, Goudy, is right out of the Lindsey Graham mold, and I think he's an excellent selection to chair this committee. He's a smart young man.
Well, he's got a lot on his plate.
Just like his uncle, Lindsey Graham.
Well, we'll see how this does. I mean, he's got a big job. All right, you have sent a letter to the White House, to the other two senators, demanding to know where President Obama was the night of September 11, 2012. Why do you want to know that?
Because the President of the United States, while an ongoing tragedy is taking place, our consulate being under attack, you would think that, like the video that we saw of the strike on Osama bin Laden, that we would see many pictures of the President attentive. All we know is that he was briefed by Panetta and Dempsey, and they left, and there was no further communication. Could I say, first of all, I think it's important that the Democrats join in this. When Joe Lieberman and I said we ought to have a 9/11 commission, the Bush administration didn't want it. When Abu Ghraib happened, I condemned it. Waterboarding, I condemned it. Those were all under the Bush administration. And for them to say that this is partisan, look, if there's nothing to it, as they are saying there's nothing to it, they should want this committee,
well,
because then
I
they
told
will
you
prove
so.
themselves right. Then they'd be able to say, hey, see, I told you there's nothing wrong with it. They're scared to death. I have never seen anything like, after 19 months, the emails concerning their priorities and the president's spokesperson saying that it had nothing to do with Benghazi. Now, that has reached a new point.
You're talking about Press Secretary Jay Carney.
I'm talking about Jay Carney. You know, Jay Carney, I knew him for years. I knew him as a pretty straightforward journalist. He has destroyed his own reputation by that statement that what clearly was the talking points, which had nothing to do but Benghazi, saying it had nothing to do with Benghazi. That, to me, is an all-time low for a presidential spokesperson.
I didn't have any particular interest in where the president was that night. I assumed that he was busy working on this, as all presidents are. But the fact that they won't tell us has now, of course, made me enormously suspicious. And then this guy that they sent, Tommy Vietor, who I'd never seen until the other night, that he was so flip about it. And he's the one in the situation when I think to myself,
he didn't remember after all. It was 2 years. But since when does 19 months go by and it has to be a court order for information? You know, in return for the confirmation of Brennan as CIA director, we were all told that everything to do with Benghazi would be released. Now the question is what else don't we know about?
Why didn't they
what's been destroyed?
But I mean, I don't like sort of the fact that everything was requested, not provided, and then a court order, and now I'm even more suspicious because they didn't provide it when they're supposed to.
Of course not. And now, as Goudy just said, what's been redacted? What is it? There's got to be a thorough review. And by the way, I'd love to see Harry Reid say, yeah, we'll make this a bicameral select committee. I think it rises to that level. Obviously, that won't happen. And so it's really too bad. And if Democrats refuse to take part in this committee, and more information comes out, they're the ones that will have egg on their faces, because the American people will rightly conclude that they weren't interested in why 4 brave Americans were murdered.
Well, I put on Greta Wire a list of things that at a minimum, I must start getting information that I would like to see if I were on a committee. But
and I added one to yours.
Yeah, and I'll put it on there.
That is that why is it that after promising to families that these culprits, these murderers, would be brought to justice, one of them did a CNN interview in a cafe in Benghazi. Why is it that not one person has been brought to justice for this heinous crime of murdering 4 Americans? And by the way, another question is, it takes 7 hours to get any of our military to Benghazi, even a overflight of our jets. I don't believe that.
Senator, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greta.
And tonight, a verbal turf war, the CIA versus the Obama administration's National Security Council. Honest mistake, or is someone lying? On the record, investigates with Cheryl Atkinson next. Also, breaking news, desperate search for 200 schoolgirls kidnapped by a terrorist group in Nigeria. And now Attorney General Eric Holder stepping in, the latest coming up.